It was a little after midnight when Thomas Hale switched on the old microphone at Blackwood Station. The red on-air light flickered above him, humming faintly like the rest of the aging equipment. Most people in town were asleep by now, but Tom had worked the late-night shift for years. He liked the quiet, the stillness, and the few insomniacs or truck drivers who tuned into his voice as they drifted across the empty highways. "Good evening, folks," he said into the mic, his voice low and calm. "You're listening to Blackwood Station, 96.3 FM. It's Wednesday night, or I guess Thursday morning, if you want to be technical. I'll be here until dawn, keeping you company." He leaned back in his chair, shuffling through the vinyl records that always smelled faintly of mildew. The station hadn't been renovated in decades. Old carpeting, wood-paneled walls, and a faint chill that never left, no matter how high the thermostat was cranked. Most nights, it was the same routine. A couple of calls, a few song requests, some late-night rambling, but tonight, Tom noticed something different. The phone line on the console blinked almost immediately before he even finished his opening words. That was unusual. He pressed the button, adjusting his headphones. "Blackwood Station, you're on the air. Who am I talking to tonight?" A burst of static filled the line, loud enough to make him wince. Then faintly came a voice. "Tom?" The way his name was said made the hairs on his arms rise. It wasn't unusual for regular callers to know him, but there was something about the tone. Familiar, intimate. "Yes, this is Tom," he said slowly. "Who's calling?" The line hissed. Then the voice whispered again. "You shouldn't be there." Tom frowned. "Excuse me? You're live on the air right now. Did you want to request a song?" There was a long pause. Then the line went dead. He pulled the headphones down around his neck, staring at the console. Prank calls happen, sure. But that one left a weight in the room, as if someone had just stepped in and was standing silently behind him. He shook it off, spinning a record and letting the warm crackle of jazz fill the booth. The music helped. The booth always felt less empty when something was playing. But 10 minutes later, the line blinked again. This time Tom hesitated before answering. "Blackwood Station, you're on the air." The voice that replied wasn't one he recognized. It sounded garbled, like someone speaking through a broken radio. "Can you hear us?" Tom adjusted the dials. "Yes, I can hear you, but you're breaking up." "Where are you calling from?" Silence. Then, more distinctly, "Underneath." The word came so clearly that Tom's breath caught. "Underneath what?" he asked, trying to keep his tone steady. The caller did not answer. The silence stretched until it became unbearable. Then the line cut off again. Tom set the phone back in its cradle, staring at the blinking light that had already gone dark. He felt cold. Not the usual chill of the drafty booth, but a deeper cold that seemed to seep into his bones. He rubbed his hands together, muttered to himself, and queued up another track. It was nothing. A prank, that was all. But the calls kept coming. The third call came half an hour later. This time, Tom was prepared. "Blackwood Station? Who am I speaking to?" There was a long exhale on the other end, like someone breathing directly into the mic. Then a woman's voice, strained and trembling. "I can't get out," she whispered. Tom felt his throat tighten. "Ma'am, are you in danger? Where are you calling from?" The woman's breathing quickened. "It's dark down here. So dark. Please, tell my brother I tried." The line cut before Tom could respond. He sat frozen, staring at the console. His instincts told him to call the police, report the number, but when he checked the call log, the screen was blank. The calls weren't registering. It was as if no one had dialed in at all. The booth suddenly felt smaller. The walls pressed closer. And then he noticed something else. The record he had put on earlier wasn't spinning anymore. The needle rested in silence, though the turntable motor still hummed. He hadn't stopped it. He replaced the needle and let the next song play, trying to keep his hands from shaking. By 2 a.m., Tom had received 5 more calls, each one stranger than the last. One was a man sobbing uncontrollably, repeating the words, "They won't let us leave." Another was a child's voice reciting the alphabet, but skipping certain letters, repeating others, until the sequence collapsed into static. And once, for nearly a full minute, the line carried nothing but scratching sounds, like fingernails dragging across wood. Tom stopped answering after the 8th call. He couldn't take it anymore. He unplugged the phone line from the console, thinking that would stop them. But the light kept blinking. Even with the line severed, the phone rang. He left it alone. He refused to pick up. Around 3:15, the station door rattled. It was locked, of course. Tom always locked it at night, but the sound was clear. Someone trying the handle, pushing against the door. He stood up, heart pounding. "Who's there?" he called out. No answer. He crept toward the narrow window that looked out into the lobby. The lobby was dark, but he could see the faint shape of the front door. Nobody was there. The handle rattled again, louder this time. Tom backed away, shutting the booth door and locking it. He tried to convince himself it was the wind, maybe a loose hinge. Then he remembered. The lobby door was heavy steel. It didn't rattle in the wind. At 3:30, the power flickered. The lights dimmed, then came back stronger. The console reset. The record stopped, and for a moment the air was silent. Then, without him touching a thing, the mic switched on. The red on-air light glowed, and through the headphones, Tom heard the voices again, all of them, every caller that night. The whispers, the sobs, the child's voice, all layered together in a distorted chorus. Underneath, "Can't get out. Shouldn't be there. They won't let us leave." Tom ripped the headphones off and slammed the console switches. Nothing responded. The board was dead, but the voices kept pouring through. He backed into the corner of the booth, pressing himself against the wall. His breath came fast, shallow. Then as suddenly as it began, the sound cut off. The silence was worse. The clock on the wall ticked past 4 a.m. Tom sat in the booth, too scared to move, waiting for dawn. The station was silent except for the faint hum of old wiring. And then faintly, the phone light blinked again. Tom buried his face in his hands. He couldn't answer. He wouldn't. But then it rang again and again, until the sound filled the booth like a demand. Against his better judgment, Tom picked up. "Blackwood Station," he said, voice trembling. There was no static this time. The line was clear, and the voice that answered made his blood run cold. It was his own. "Good evening, folks," it said. "You're listening to Blackwood Station, 96.3 FM. I'll be here until dawn, keeping you company." Tom dropped the phone. The voice kept speaking, looping his own words back at him. Not a recording, not playback. A perfect mimicry of his voice, speaking as though it were live. Then it began to say things he had never spoken. "We've been waiting, Tom. We've been underneath you all along." The sound of hundreds of voices joined his own, chanting, pleading, weeping. Tom stumbled toward the door, fumbling with the lock. It wouldn't budge. The knob turned endlessly in his hand, but the door remained shut. At 4:30, the final broadcast began. Not by Tom's choice. The mic came alive again, red light blazing. The voices spilled out into the night, transmitted across the town, reaching every dark bedroom, every lonely truck stop, every insomniac huddled by their radio. If anyone had been awake, they would have heard the sound of Blackwood Station crying out. And layered in the chaos was Tom's voice, begging to be let out. When dawn broke, the station was quiet again. The manager arrived at 7 o'clock, coffee in hand, ready for another dull morning. He unlocked the lobby, walked into the booth. Empty, no sign of Thomas Hale. The mic was still on. The on-air lights still glowed, and faintly, through the static of dead air, a voice whispered, "You shouldn't be here.